Hello, everybody. This is Alan Rich, and some years ago, in 2007, I made a statement on YouTube that we are in serious trouble. And I got a lot of disgruntled emails from telling everybody that we were in serious trouble and that the country was in jeopardy. And today, I would like to say that the human race is in serious jeopardy. So I'll tell you a little story to prepare you for this. I would like to go back 5,000 years to Egypt, where the coinage was called sesterces. There were people in that period who manufactured weapons of war, like bows and arrows, and battering rams, and chariots, and uniforms for the Egyptian soldiers, and all kinds of protection for the horses, and oil that they dropped over the sides of a castle to kill some people. And they were making trillions of sesterces, these people. But in order to continue to make all that money, they had to convince their people to fight the enemy. So they utilized, the gods were telling them to do it, and they had to be patriotic. And so millions and millions of Egyptians became soldiers and fought the enemy until the Romans took over, and their people were making weapons of destruction as well and convincing the Romans to become soldiers, while those individuals who were making these weapons of destruction were making trillions of drachmas. The Greeks did the same thing with the Trojan horse and Helen of Troy, and the Greek munitions manufacturers were making trillions of gold and coins, etc., etc. Now, in those days, you could only kill a few people with a bow and arrow, maybe a few thousand people over a long period of time. But in the year 2010, it's quite different. Because in 1945, the most optimistic predictions of the effects of the war in Hiroshima and Nagasaki was approximately 90 to 166,000 in Hiroshima and 60 to 80,000 in Nagasaki. They estimate that about half of those people died within the first day, probably within the first 10 seconds. And overall, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people eventually died from the radiation. Now we're in 2010, and the world has developed the H-bomb, which is much more powerful than the A-bomb. And even the most optimistic predictions of the effects of a major nuclear exchange foresee the death of 100 million people within a very short time, probably 10 or 15 seconds. And the nuclear winter that will follow will destroy the entire human race. Probably there will be left a few one-celled animals and plants, but it will take billions of years for the planet to revive itself from the radiation. Now we do not have individuals creating weapons of war. We have corporations all over the world who are creating these weapons, not only atomic weapons, but other kinds of weapons, to continue to convince our young men and women that they must go and fight for the enemy and wipe out the enemy. All over the world, they are fighting and battling and struggling while these large corporations are making trillions and trillions of dollars or drachmas or euros or whatever their coinage is, while our boys are dying. I cannot tell you how deeply affected I am from my grandchildren, for my children, for your grandchildren and your children. And nothing about this is in the newspapers. Nothing is on television. We are all in denial. And I leave you this message. We must stop war. We must stop these people from creating these weapons, because in a nuclear hell, they're going to go with all of us, except most of us just want some peace, just want to raise our families, and just want to have an opportunity to live out our lives. As for the United States Congress and the United States Senate, I shall only say a few words. They have been taken over by the large corporations who are manufacturing the weapons of destruction and who have robbed the American people of their rights to health care and to a good life. And the fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings. William Shakespeare. Thank you, and good night.